Kitco Mining special coverage of PDAC 2024 is brought to you by Gold Mining, Uranium Energy Corp, and Uranium Royalty Corp.
Francis MacDonald wants to move the focus on the lithium west and north in Canada. Lift Power's flagship project in Yellowknife has drilled over 34,000 meters. Francis MacDonald is the CEO. Francis, welcome to Kitco.
Thanks for having me.
Why the focus on Yellowknife? We typically think about lithium as being something that happens in Ontario and Quebec.
Sure. Well, the Yellowknife area has very similar geology to Ontario and Quebec. And so the Slave geological province, same age rocks, very similar geology, has big gold deposits like we see in Quebec and Ontario. And so it should have lithium. And so what we have is a spodumene pegmatite district that's sticking out of the ground. It's been known about since the 50s, and a lot of work been done from the 50s up until the 80s. And it just kind of went off everybody's radar. So it's kind of special because they stick out of the ground. You can see them from space. And when you have outcrop that you can see the whole pegmatite, it's easy to see how big they can be because we have two dimensions already. So that's why we ended up there, just because it was such an obvious target. There was a lot of work done historically, and all we had to do is go in there and start drilling.
What's the highlights today?
Highlights, so we drilled 34,000 meters, like you said. That was about 200 drill holes last year. And the grades and widths that we're seeing are pretty similar to what we see on surface. So we had some big intersects of 80 meters at 1.13. I think in general, what we're seeing is true width is between 10 and 30 meters. And there's quite a few intersects in that 30 to 40 meter range at 1.2 to 1.6% Li2O.
Now, when you're mining for lithium, you're usually transporting a lot more material than you would be with other types of mines. And then you're kind of highlighting there might be some infrastructure advantages up there.
Sure, yeah. So to put this in context, it's about 8 tons of lithium ore to make a ton of spodumene concentrate. And so if you just use a round number of 100 million tons, that means you have about 12 million tons of concentrate to ship. And so 12 million tons, I'm a geologist, I didn't know what that meant. And that's like filling Skydome, Rogers Stadium 5 times from the field all the way up to the dome. And so you think about that, and how do you actually move that amount of material? It's having rail or port is very important. And then you need to have a road to get the material to rail. So on our Yellowknife lithium project, we have a paved highway that goes through 7 of the lithium deposits. And then there's also rail in Hay River to the south of Yellowknife. And that rail line can take you down to Edmonton. And then from Edmonton, you can get out to the Pacific coast.
Now, in another interview, you were saying that you're kind of a go big or go home strategy. And you did have a big program of 34,000 meters. What's the strategy around there, Francis?
It's pretty simple because these are outcropping. There's a lot of channel sampling at surface. So we know what the grades and the widths are at surface before we started. So there's really not much else to do. It's really just to go in there and drill and see what the grade distribution is and the geometry is in the subsurface.
Now, what is the downstream conversion facilities for doing something for lithium? Is that also going to be kind of a hiccup?
So right now, 97% of the world's feedstock for hard rock lithium goes to China for conversion. And the other 3% is in Australia with IGO and Albemarle. They're building converters. They're not up to nameplate capacity. They're having challenges because it's a difficult chemical process. And so we're hearing talk of downstream facilities or converters in North America, but right now there's nothing built that's operating. And so eventually there will be. We will have some kind of refining capacity here, but the question is really how long it takes to actually bring that online. And so this is something I think that I always hammer on is that LIFT has access to the Pacific coast, and that sets us apart from a lot of other North American projects because we can actually get a spodumene concentrate to Asia where it's being processed now.
Are you funded?
Yeah, so we did a financing in November, so that was about $12.5 million. We started January with about $18 million in cash, and so we're obviously depleting that because we're drilling. We have 4 rigs spinning right now, and that'll be another about 18,000 meters, and then we'll have some cash left over after that. And so we're aiming for a resource estimate this year.
2023, I don't need to tell you, was a tough year for lithium, and then even the start of 2024, though we start to see an outlook. What are you hearing regarding prices?
Well, in the last week, things have changed a little bit. So lithium carbonate futures contracts had been bouncing around a bottom. And in the last week, we saw them tick up every day. And so I think they're up about 15% in the last week. And so hopefully that's a indication that we're coming out of the bottom here, because we've been sitting on a bottom. Prices haven't moved from about $13,000 a ton lithium carbonate for a while. And the other positive thing was that Asian battery manufacturers came out. Macquarie had a note earlier this week, and they were saying that demand is probably going to surprise to the upside for them. And so if we're seeing the battery producers saying that, we think that lithium demand is going to be increasing, I think that's a really positive sign.
We've seen some pretty good takeouts this year, which has provided some lift in the sector. So I think of like Solaris Resources, $130 million from Zijin, Ascena Resources, $368 million from Yintai. However, like TMAC, I think it was about 2 years ago up in your region as well too, they had their sale blocked to one of the Chinese miners. Do you have a feel in terms of like right now, is that kind of a hindrance? Could you get a Chinese investment, or would that be something that would be off the table?
I think at this point, it's probably off the table, because we saw what the federal government did. I think it was about 12 months ago. There was Chinese state-owned enterprises that had equity stakes in Canadian junior lithium explorers, and the Canadian federal government forced them to divest those equity stakes that they owned. So I think it would be pretty difficult for a Chinese state-linked company to come in, and a lot of them do have links to the state. So it does really shut off a large pool of capital, which is unfortunate, because right now in the Western capital markets, they're closed, and it's difficult to fund projects right now.
We've seen the quarterlies that have come out for the year end, and they haven't been pretty for the lithium miners. Looking at Albemarle, they're cutting capex, and they're also focusing on organic growth. You did say that you're funded, but difficult time right now if you'd be raising capital.
Yeah, and so we're out. We're looking at strategic investment opportunities as well. Because in order to keep a project going, if the capital markets are closed, there may be larger companies, corporates who are somewhere in the lithium supply chain that might want to see North American projects be advanced in this downturn.
You said in another interview that even though that lithium prices have dropped substantially, producers are still making money.
Yeah. So if you look at the producers that are producing spodumene, at least, a lot of their costs are between $500 and $600 a ton. And even at the bottom, spodumene is trading at $900 a ton. So there's quite a few companies that are still making money. But then we've also seen a supply curtailment as well, where some of the higher cost producers have been going offline, and one of those would be Core Lithium. And they had just gotten started, and then they put everything on care and maintenance. So demand is projected to go like this. Supply is kind of going down, and I think that's a good setup for a next run in lithium prices at some point.
Lastly, milestones over the next 12 months, Francis.
So we're drilling right now. That program will wrap up in about a month, and that's probably what we'll go to a resource with. And so we have a resource estimate coming out this year. We're running the metallurgical testing right now, so that'll be coming out in the next months as well. And then it's really, we see what happens in the market at that point. And we're doing a lot of environmental work this year as well, because we need 2 years of baseline data to get into environmental assessment. So we're moving forward with the permitting process, and that's relatively cheap work, but it has a huge effect on the timelines of the project. So we'll keep advancing it in any way we can in whatever market that we're in, and ideally we have a turn in the capital markets, and there's some more money available at some point.
Francis, thanks for taking us through it.
Thanks for having me.
My name is Michael McRae with Kitco Mining here at PDAC 2024.
Kitco Mining special coverage of PDAC 2024 is brought to you by Gold Mining, Uranium Energy Corp, and Uranium Royalty Corp.